We are live. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Sarah. Good morning.
Good morning. It's so good to see you.
You too.
So, for those that don't know, we had Cheryl from Tiny Health scheduled for a webinar back in December, and we had to cancel it for some other reasons. And I'm so excited to finally have her back here with us a couple months later. So, Cheryl, it's so nice to see you, and I can't wait for this discussion on gut health and the importance for mom and baby and what that means for everyone. And I just can't wait to really just like dive in and learn together with you. So, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to have this discussion.
All right. So I usually give everyone like a minute or two to join. So maybe like in a minute or two, we'll just dive right into the discussion. So
Sure.
Well, in case people don't know, Cheryl and I are both located in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
By the way,
Yeah.
we should find some time to see each other again soon in real life.
Yeah, we're neighbors too. Almost, right? 10 minutes away. I mean, literally.
It's true. We
Yeah.
are. We are. So for those that are joining, please know we always send a post-webinar email, which includes a link to the recording and resources that Cheryl will discuss. There is a live chat section on the right-hand side. So if you want to ask any questions, you can put them in the chat now so you don't forget. During the discussion, we'll get them answered for you in real time. And then I always sort of love to know where everyone is located. So for the people that have already joined, if you'll just type in the comment section where you're located, it's always kind of fun to see where people are. I've actually never logged in to StreamYard from my cell phone, so hopefully it's as easy as it looks on the desktop. So we'll see. Okay, we have someone from San Francisco. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Lauren.
Can you see the chat, Cheryl?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, great. Okay, Philadelphia and San Francisco. Okay, coast to coast. Las Vegas.
Amazing. Awesome.
Okay, great. Well, just to be respectful of everyone's time, it's early and later in the workday for some of you. So Cheryl, let's get started.
Let's go.
All right, you guys. So once again, thank you so much for being here. I'm Sarah Hollingsworth, the founder of Populist, a simplified baby registry platform for expecting parents. I have a 2-year-old and an almost 5-year-old, both girls. I'm located in Austin, Texas. And for those of you on the webinar today, let us know if you are a first-time parent, a veteran parent, or if you're expecting. I kind of just love to know where everyone is in their parenting journey. You can just type it in the comments, but wherever you are in your journey to become a parent, I think we can all agree that the most annoying thing is the unsolicited advice we always receive, especially when you're pregnant. And so that's where the name solicited advice came from for our webinar and content series. And TTC, what's TTC stand for?
Trying to conceive.
Oh, trying to conceive. That's right. Okay. Well, our fingers are crossed for you, Lauren, and your growing family. We have someone who's a first-time parent, a first-time mom with a 7-month-old. Okay, this is amazing. So I think we can all agree and laugh about the unsolicited advice. And like I was saying, that is where the title solicited advice came from. When I was pregnant, I was the first of my sisters and friends to have a baby, and I was just desperate for advice that was actually useful and tangible and information I really wanted. And so I get to hire experts like Cheryl and bring them on to really deliver the information we actually need as new parents and trying to conceive. So thank you guys so much for being here. Cheryl, I would love it if you would just introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll get right into the discussion. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have 2 kids. One just turned 6. And the other one's turning 4 next Monday. So a lot of birthdays in April for me. And this is my second venture-funded company. My first I started in New York in 2009, a consumer tech company. And this time, as I was thinking about my next company, I had 2 kids, or I had a baby, my 6-year-old, and she was breech, and I had to have a C-section. So I was just researching, like what that would mean for her and things like that, and, backup plans and all that. So that's how my journey actually started, with researching gut microbiome and sort of the health impacts it may have for a baby. I'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But yeah, happy to be here. And, I'm excited to have this chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, so I think it would be really interesting if people, I know this story, we've spent some time together,
Mhm.
just personally. Can you give everyone the reason you sort of had this idea to start Tiny Health? Like, what was it about your own journey to become a parent that really was like this aha moment for you to create this business? So, if you'll give everyone the quick backstory on Tiny Health, I think that would be like the perfect place for us to start.
Yeah, great. So yes, I mentioned, my first daughter being breached, and kind of like the doctors were like, "You're probably going to need a C-section." So I was just trying to figure out, is there an impact of a C-section procedure on me and the, of course, on me. I'm having a major operation, and there's a lot of antibiotics involved during the operation. So I was curious if that would impact the child and things like that. And so I was like diving into the research in terms of, should I even try for a labor, because I've heard some moms like, oh, I labored for, I don't know, 20 hours and ended up with a C-section anyway. So it turns out that there is a research, a lot of research showing that a C-section born baby's gut look very different from a vaginally born baby's gut. And the C-section baby's gut actually is linked to higher risk of this triad of atopic march or allergic diseases that usually starts with eczema between 3 to 6 months. And babies who have eczema are at a higher risk for food allergies between 6 months when they start solids to about 2 years old. And then they're also at higher risk for asthma by age 6. So it's a triad of allergic progression. And then hay fever is an adult too. So I was like, oh no, like I don't want that. Why is that? So I kind of had to dig into like the science behind it and learn that the vaginal canal of the mom, I didn't know this before. There's something called the vaginal microbiome, and I can even go a bit 101 to what is even the microbiome.
Yeah,
But the
that's gonna
baby,
be one of our
yeah.
next questions.
Okay. So I'll just give you the brief overview. So baby actually acquires first some vaginal microbes from the vaginal tract during birth and labor, and then some gut microbes from the mom through some fecal fluid, because the gut microbes, the gut microbiome is represented by like stool or fecal, right, matter. And so during labor, there might be some exchange of fluid, and when baby comes out through the tract, they're swallowing the vaginal fluid and some fecal fluid from the mom. And then through
Meconium,
breastfeeding.
right? That's what we would refer to as meconium.
No, meconium is actually from the baby. The black, gooey tar stuff from the baby's first poop
Okay,
is
so
called
they're not the
meconium.
same. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You guys, and I still don't know some of these things, so I'm just going to ask them in case and we do have some people who are trying to conceive and they haven't had their baby yet, so I'm just going to ask these basic questions.
Frankly, these are all things I wish I knew, like
Right.
way before even trying to conceive. So this is perfect if you were trying to conceive and learning about this now. Kudos to you. So back to my story, and then so I'm just explaining how baby acquires their microbes, because they don't have any gut microbes in the womb. So the fetus is sterile, and they come out when they're coming out on their way out of the mom's vaginal tract. They acquire these microbes from the environment and from the mom. And through breastfeeding, your breast milk is also magical. You're continuing to transfer the mom's gut microbes through breast milk, and so breastfeeding is very healing in that sense too. So then with the C-section, I'm like, okay, baby's now bypassing. They're not going through the vaginal canal. They're being operated and taken out, right? And sometimes that's really medically necessary. So in my case, I learned that, well, then labor is actually beneficial. Even if I ended up with a C-section, if baby spends any amount of time or as long as possible, so long labors are actually scientifically also better for baby, because the baby's getting some vaginal microbes as they're kind of spending time in there, right? I'm not sure if some fecal fluid would exchange in the vaginal canal, but at least they're getting that vaginal exposure. So I opted to try even for a vaginal birth, even though my baby was breached. I was hoping she would come out, but I had a 16-hour labor, and then I kind of waved the white flag. I did all I can. I also read in my research, you can do something called a vaginal seeding. There's 2 papers now showing that with vaginal seeding, and I'll explain what that is in a little bit, baby's microbiome looks more like vaginally born babies, even through a C-section. So what it is vaginal seeding, which is what I ended up doing, and I would encourage you to check with your OBGYN first before doing anything like that, is when I was pushed to the operating room, there's a prep time. So like an hour of prep time. So emergency C-sections are never truly immediate. You do have to prep and do spinal tap and all that. I asked my midwife to put a gauze in my vagina for about an hour during prep. And then when baby is operated and birthed, and within the first 2 minutes, you're swabbing the baby with your vaginal fluids through that gauze, like in the mouth and all over, to mimic that vaginal canal, which is really interesting, right? So that's what I ended up doing. And I think that's what helped eventually Charlie, my daughter, ended up getting eczema around 6 months, but it was a milder form of eczema. And I wonder if I had not done that, if that would have been a more severe form. But that's what piqued my interest. And then when I was pregnant with my son 2 years later, he was breached again. So I was really worried about a second C-section, and I wanted to course correct his gut before he got eczema. I was trying to prevent eczema for him. So I started Tiny Health a week after he was born, and magically I had a VBAC with him. VBAC is a vaginal birth after C-section. So it's very lucky. And he actually didn't end up having any eczema symptoms.
Okay. I have so many questions. So
yeah.
For the people who have not had their baby yet, just quickly, if they end up having a C-section, yours, not necessarily your suggestion, but even though you just shared that you put the gauze in, your vagina, and then you use that all over the baby that you had a C-section with, so that they could get the microbiomes from mom, since they didn't go all the way through the vaginal canal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the best way for them to sort of, how am I trying to ask this?
Restore their gut.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. Is that like the most effective way for someone to help their baby's sort of like gut health over time if they're going to have a C-section?
Well, that definitely is the factor, right? Because I mentioned the papers that shows that vaginally born babies have less risk for eczema, allergies, and asthma compared to C-section born babies. So definitely there's some connection with perhaps the vaginal microbes, which, by the way, the vaginal microbiome should be lactobacillus dominant. Lactobacillus is a mouthful, but it is a very common probiotic. You'll see if you take any probiotic off the shelf, your vaginal microbiome should be like 99% lactobacillus dominant. There are vaginal microbiomes that have no lactobacillus or very low lactobacillus. And when that happens, it's not a healthy vaginal microbiome. So actually, we do have a vaginal microbiome test. Now, knowing what we know from a scientific perspective, I've hired scientists on my team, and we have medical scientific advisors from Johns Hopkins, from University of Colorado, from Mayo Clinic and all that. So I would actually do a vaginal test first before, seeding baby. And I would actually do it even if I'm planning for a vaginal birth, because you just never know, you need plan B. So in case you had to do an emergency C-section, and learning about your vaginal microbiome, making sure you have the right composition of microbes, healthy vaginal microbes there, then you could opt for perhaps doing the vaginal seeding. So that's one component. I mentioned breastfeeding is the number one modifier, and in terms of more scientifically proven and backed to restore baby's gut from a C-section. Because I mentioned earlier at the beginning that mom is continuing to transfer her gut microbes through breast milk to baby, so that if baby was missing some of the gut microbes through that birth, remember there was like the vaginal fluid and also fecal fluid inoculating baby at birth. So both of them are important. And so breastfeeding is very healing too. And for formula feeding moms, there are certain formulas that have prebiotics that support baby's gut a bit more. And then there's also specific strains of probiotics, infant-approved probiotics that you can supplement to help restore their gut too. And this is where we can get into a little bit like later. Does all infant need probiotic? Do they all need probiotics? Is there a danger of supplementing with the wrong strains or over supplementing? The answer is yes, but I can dive into that a bit later.
So just, I want to make sure that these webinars like fly by. So I want to make sure we can make this valuable for everyone. So I've got like Kristen, Jordan, Cherie, Bryn, some people on the line and more who have babies at home, even toddlers, and they're still trying for, their second or third baby. So
Mhm.
if they've already delivered,
Mhm.
are there some things, obviously, let's assume they're past the breast milk phase. And if you guys aren't, you can let us know. But are there things they can be doing at home for their young children to protect their baby's gut and make sure that it's healthy, because let's assume we haven't reached the first 1,000 days of life, which, are really important, and you can talk about that. But for the people
Mhm.
who have kids at home, are there things that they can consider doing to improve their baby's gut? And what are like some tangible things that they can do? And we have some questions that I'll get to, but I just want to ask that question for the people who have kids.
There's always tangible things. So you know how when you're pregnant, you take a prenatal like genetic test to see if there's any genetic issues with the baby, and you can't really change your genes, right? So there's not a whole lot of options there. But with the microbiome, if you understand what it is, it's very influenced by diet or nutrition, supplements, as well as lifestyle changes. So when I mentioned lifestyle, the amount of exposure to nature and pets, and even like the household cleaning chemicals, if you're using a lot of Clorox and antibacterial soap, that may not be good for your infant's gut or even your family's gut, because maybe they're licking everything and it's killing not just the bad bacteria, but also the good bacteria that's very protective of their gut health. So in every Tiny Health stool test, we do give recommendations there. And I wouldn't, there are some maybe more high level generic advice, but for babies in the first 1,000 days, that time point is really critical for their immune training. And we will have to dive deeper into the science a little bit, because I want people to understand why that is a critical time point. And what that means if you have a child who's over 3 or 5, what does that mean for them? It doesn't mean you can't change their microbiome. You can, even us, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 40 this year and I can change my microbiome still. I have some gut deficiencies. But it takes me 6 to 9 months of really disciplined dietary supplement lifestyle changes. Whereas in babies, it sometimes takes only 2-3 weeks to really turn their microbiome around. And the earlier you try to detect major imbalances that are really connected to colicky symptoms, sleep issues, eczema, like a lot of common baby symptoms, gassiness, constipation, you can link it back to an imbalanced gut. And then as they grow, their gut becomes more diverse, and it just becomes a little bit, you have to work a lot harder, right? So from a 2-week intervention period, you might have to do 1 month and then maybe a couple of months. And then, so I would say I want to dive into why is it important in the first 1,000 days. So I hope, did I answer your question or everyone's questions? You can still do it.
So it's obviously the lifestyle changes, the cleaning products, the nutrition, all of that stuff matters. And then, I want to just reiterate what you said, your gut tests and your kits, they always recommend, once they get the results back, right, there's a recommended plan for improvement. So you give them actual ideas on how they can improve. Mom's gut, baby's gut, and so on. It's not just results. There's an action plan.
No, because this was, I created a product for me, or I was looking for a baby gut test. So what happened was, remember I told you I was researching all these papers showing how important gut health is for babies in infancy, right? And how to course correct or rebalance the C-section baby's gut. So I found all these papers showing interventions, like I mentioned. So breastfeeding is very healing. The caveat here is that mom's gut should be in the right balance too. So that's kind of why when we started our baby gut test, we also have a pregnancy and trying to conceive gut test. And this is why I mentioned earlier, I wish I knew about it when I was trying to conceive, because it turns out with my VBAC, my vaginal birth after my C-section, my second child, I thought, oh, vaginally born, breastfed baby, his gut should be perfect. No, it turns out that my gut was deficient. So I'm like, I'm pretty healthy. Why is my gut deficient? And I then asked my mom, I was vaginally born, right? And she was like, yeah, you did. But the doctor told me to formula feed you from 1 month out. So I was formula fed pretty much for a long time. And then I was given antibiotics pretty early in life. And now, there's a lot of papers showing that antibiotic exposure in early life can wipe out the beneficial bacteria that should be passed on from generation to generation. So there's, frankly, our population is very deficient in these bifidobacteria microbes. Bifidobacteria is what you really want to see passing from mom to baby. So I had 0. So when I did my gut test during pregnancy with my son, I'm like, oh no, I had no bifidobacteria. So when he was born, even vaginally born, I was like, well, I didn't even have any to pass on to my baby through the vaginal birth in the first place. So I had to supplement him with a specific strain of bifidobacteria probiotic to like restore his gut. And now with, we've come a long way since we launched. We've been around for 2 years now, and we served over 25,000 families. We see in 30% of vaginally born breastfed infants that their guts don't look great. When I say don't look great, it means like 50, 90% E. coli in their guts. So E. coli.
And that's a vaginal born baby and a breastfed baby.
Correct. So
their gut still isn't like superior.
Their guts don't look good. They're 70% of the time they do map to signs where they do have a better gut, but 30% of the time they don't have a good gut, and moms and dads even are puzzled. When we do have mom's gut sample, we see that they're like me in a way. They're deficient of bifidobacteria. There's no bifidobacteria in mom's gut or even dad's gut. So it's interesting that even if dad has it and mom doesn't have it, of course, mom is a very crucial plays a crucial role in birthing the child and breastfeeding the child. But dads and older siblings can pass it on too through kissing and just interaction, sharing food and things like that. Okay. So that's something really interesting. But if knowing what I knew I had during pregnancy, I was supplementing myself too with a good BIF probiotic because I knew I was missing that, and I wanted to pass it on to my baby.
Okay. I want to do some rapid fire questions really quick. And then I have some more questions, from our prep that we talked about that I want to get into, I think will be really important. So we have a question from Jordan. I had a vaginal birth, but had to be on antibiotics. Could that be related to my daughter's eczema?
Yes. So there, 2 reasons why C-section babies look different, right? One is they're not passing through the vaginal canal, as I mentioned earlier. The second reason is because they're also getting exposed to mom's antibiotics during the operations, right? So in a similar fashion, there are also studies of NICU babies being exposed to a lot of antibiotics, and even like term babies, normal term babies being exposed to antibiotics that may impact their guts. So again, the baby's gut is really simple at birth because they're getting microbes from mom. So if you imagine the baby's gut has
Jordan had a vaginal birth.
Yeah. So that's the thing, even vaginal birth, and if the baby is exposed to antibiotics, again, sometimes it's life-saving, right? It's needed. It really depends on what kind of antibiotics and how long they were given antibiotics for. So if it's a narrow spectrum, which means it's limited to killing only certain bugs, versus broad spectrum. So you should always clarify with your doctor if your child's being given antibiotics, even for ear infections and things like that, that it's ideally narrow spectrum, because broad spectrum means it will kill everything in a baby's gut, right? And also the course, the longer the dose or the course of antibiotics, the more impact it will have on your baby's gut. So the thing is, sometimes these antibiotic medications are necessary, but the medical community isn't, maybe they didn't go to school learning about the gut microbiome, right? They are forgetting to help restore the baby's gut. So we're here to provide that education, at least, in academic papers coming out, we're seeing that impact of antibiotics, overuse, in fact, of antibiotics, right, to a child's gut, to even adult guts, right? And there are ways to restore it, right? Breastfeeding, again, if mom had bifidobacteria, can be very healing. And, a combination of maybe sometimes baby need extra probiotics with specific strains. And this is where I want to emphasize, not all probiotics in the market are equal. There are some very clinically backed infant probiotics. There are some that are there's just no evidence behind it. And I wouldn't just give my baby a random probiotic. I would look into the strains, because different strains perform different functions. And so we tell you, actually, if your baby is missing the strains that are essential for their immune system training and what strains they actually need. We do recommend brands in our product, but you can choose whatever strains you find that matches what they're missing. And they're all like, we provide citations. We back up what we recommend you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So you've sort of addressed this a little bit, but if you can, we can quickly touch on this one more time. What if born vaginal, but still has eczema and was breastfed?
Yeah, so this could be in
Same.
that 30%, group, right? Which is very surprising. I would encourage you, Kristen, to do a gut test yourself. Because what I learned was I had 0 bifidobacteria. So I had managed to get that back up to between 8 to 10%, but it took me 6 to 9 months I had high fiber diet. I had good bifidobacteria, multi-strain probiotic. And I was like really trying to get out in nature more and, pets and things like that. And after 6 months, I did see my bifidobacteria going from 0 to 8% and 10%. So it is possible. It just takes a long time. The other thing that was crucial to me recolonizing my missing BIS was adding an HMO supplement to my diet. So HMO, it stands for human milk oligosaccharides. So human milk obviously is meant to, basically it's breast milk, right? So actually a third of breast milk is HMOs, and they're prebiotic fibers that the baby's gut can't digest. But they're there for the bifidobacteria in a baby's gut to break down these milk sugars so that it helps them colonize the baby's gut. So that's one of the reasons, there's so many reasons why breast milk is so important, aside from growth hormones, antibodies, and all that stuff. It also has, ideally, again, transferred from mom's gut is the bifidobacteria in breast milk, and also HMOs, right? So the breast milk supplies not just the probiotics, possibly, but the prebiotics to help the probiotics colonize an infant gut. So that's why, even if the baby was born with a C-section or had been given antibiotics, and assuming that kind of impaired the bifidobacteria in the baby's gut, breastfeeding and then maybe combined with a BIF strain probiotic for infants, you can help your baby recolonize the missing bacteria in their gut. Okay. So taking that same model for me, when I had no BIFs, I can take the BIF probiotic myself, but it's not going to colonize because I'm missing the food. The prebiotic is the food to the probiotic. So there are now adult HMO supplements. So I was taking that in combination with the dietary actions, and that's what helped me recolonize my missing BIFs in my gut. I'm just recreating that breastfeeding environment in my adult gut. Basically.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Can food and nut allergies in babies and small children be related to their gut?
Yeah, I mean, there's a strong link. So we are not in an allergy test. Sometimes parents think, do you detect allergens? And no, there's no such test in infants or even babies. There's not such thing as an allergy test, unfortunately, unless you do a blood test. And you really want to avoid that for your infant in the first year. It's just a painful experience. But there's a strong connection between an imbalanced infant gut with, again, many symptoms, but especially atopic march or allergic march. Eczema, the triad of eczema, food allergies, and asthma is very connected to early dysbiosis. Okay. And, I kind of want to go back to the science behind it for a little bit, right, to help you understand. So I mentioned baby is sterile in the womb. When they come out, imagine their guts are like, their large intestines are like a theater room, and there's seats in it. So when they're born, they maybe have 10 seats, and that's all. So in a tiny health gut test, baby gut test, you maybe see 10 different species of bacteria in their gut. Hopefully there's no fungi or viruses or parasites. We can detect that too, but it should be primarily 8 out of 10 seats are filled with bifidobacteria that ideally came from mom or dad or sibling, right? And for the first year of life, ideally 8 seats out of 10 are that bifidobacteria that protects their gut, while maybe having 1 or 2 E. coli type bacteria, which is really important to be there as well to train their immune system. Some guts we see have 0 E. coli, maybe they're too clean and over sanitizing. So there is such a thing where, parents are too clean and cleaning everything and too sanitized, and that's not good either. So in the first year of life, it's very important to keep the right balance of beneficial protective bacteria and, the unfriendlies to be low while they're being exposed. And then 6 months, as you may know, 6 to 9 months is when your infant starts solids, right? So that number of seats in the theater expands from 10 seats to 20 to 50. To maybe a year, there's maybe 100. We want to see more seats then because you want to have more space for these food bacteria coming in, and like you want their immune system to respond to these food allergens correctly, right? So you and I, Sarah, if we were to do an adult gut test, which we also carry, we might see 300 or 500 species. So our theaters are much larger and more complex. So this is why in the first 1,000 days of a baby's life, so it starts in conception actually, and when you conceive, the first 1,000 days, and it ends around like 2 years, baby's 2 years old, is when the baby's gut is expanding the number of seeds. And so it's easier to plug out the unfriendly and put in the friendly at that stage. And then between 3 to 5 is when the baby's gut stabilizes and matures fully. The seeds are like a little bit more fixed. So it's much harder then to like pluck things out and replace it, which is why it took me 6 months, right? It could take a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, maybe maybe 3 months to change their guts. Again, it's possible. It's just a much larger effort.
Right. Okay, I want to go back to the pregnant women really quick. Can you just give us some like very quick signs that we may not have a healthy gut? What would that be? Like, how would we know, besides just general curiosity, why we might want to get a gut test kit for a mom? Can you just rattle off a few signs that we may have an unhealthy gut
during pregnancy,
or even before?
Or anyway, yeah. I mean, I would do it as soon as you can. I wish I knew about this preconception, so I can restore and make sure my gut has the right BIFs, at least 5% bifidobacteria with the right strains that I should be passing it on to baby. And an Archimantha is another strain that's important for babies as it relates to prevention of allergies, eczema, and asthma. Archimantha is a bug that replenishes the mucus on your gut lining. So you may have heard of the term leaky gut. So Archimantha helps keep your gut lining strong. So I didn't have that either. So I was like so deficient in a few different things. So if I had known this earlier, I would have taken that 6 months to restore my gut. So I make sure that when my baby is born, I'm passing off the right combination of microbes to my baby. So that, and then like we have also like for the vaginal microbiome I mentioned earlier, it's important to make sure you're lactobacillus dominant. If you're not, there's also links to preterm labor. So that's another really important thing if you're trying to conceive or you're pregnant right now. The vaginal test can tell you if you have a healthy microbiome, vaginal microbiome. Baby's going to pass through that first ideally, and then to lower the risk of preterm labor. And if you do have a C-section, you want to see if you're a good candidate for doing vaginal seeding, right? As I mentioned earlier with the gauze. And then for pregnancy, we also have indicators of gestational diabetes. So a lot of women are actually walking around pre-diabetic, and we don't know that until we get pregnant, because when we get pregnant, our metabolic state changes to be a bit more, we gain fat for our baby's health, right? And we kind of like hormones change and all that. So a lot of moms then kind of like pre-diabetic moms get gestational diabetes during pregnancy, and they may need to get medication for that. And that's, something that you want to avoid. So our test kind of can show you if you take it again earlier during trying to conceive stage or in the first trimester. Before you take the glucose test, remember you all had to drink this glucose drink in like, it's pretty late, like I think 20 something like week. I can't remember what week, but okay. I would kind of learn about that earlier if I have a gut that is more predisposed to gestational diabetes, and take action sooner and changing my dietary, my diet, my nutrition, my supplements, and lifestyle. Like, maybe you need to work out more and walk more and, all that. So that, and then,
but are there symptoms that like I might be having, where I might say, okay, that's an indicator that I might have a bad gut. I'm going to go get a test. So my question is, are there symptoms that might
Yeah.
indicate I don't have a healthy gut?
Not really. I mean, it's hard to say, right? A lot of these are, like there's so much that links back to the gut. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So you may have some other symptoms, like also, like, for example, autoimmune conditions affect women disproportionately more than men, right? And we don't know that oftentimes until we get pregnant or postpartum. There's some sort of event, right? Health event. So like chronic conditions like like eczema or like allergies and diabetes and all that. Chances are, if you have any sort of like health condition, is you can find some imbalance in your gut. But you could also, like if you feel perfectly normal and healthy, you don't know, like you just have to check in. Of course, there are moms who do a test and it comes back really perfect, and so then you have the peace of mind that, oh yeah, my gut is good, right? And also the same thing for your baby, right? Oftentimes we hear parents like, I just birthed my kid and my baby's fine. They're like totally fine. And then 6 months hit. 6 months is when you start solids. And that's where everything kind of like, you find out things at 6 months when they first, are exposed to more microbes from the environment through diet. And then you know how your baby's immune system reacts to it, right? And then you get which is why you normally get eczema around 6 months, food allergies and things like that. I would really, really encourage you to check in earlier. Like I would say about the first month post-birth, or maybe the third month is fine too, because a lot of it is like if the baby's gut is really imbalanced, like when I say imbalance, I mean 90% E. coli in the baby's gut. So 9 out of 10 seeds are E. coli, and there's no bifidobacteria. And so babies don't get sick. Babies are not actually born with an immune system at birth. These microbes are actually training their immune system. So this is pretty important to understand. That's why you need the right balance of microbes. So babies can really tolerate a high level of unfriendly bacteria in their guts. They may be gassy, so you may hear your baby crying and colicky or just fussy in general. My C-section baby was never able to nap more than 45 minutes. And my VBAC baby can nap 2-3 hours, no problem. So for me, I mean, a sample size of 2, I saw a remarkable difference between their sleep patterns, but you can see scientific journals showing the same pattern. So if your baby isn't sleeping well, something may be off in their guts and you want to check in earlier before ideally 6 months, because when 6 months hit and you try to solids on your baby and then there's all kinds of reactions and you want to fix that ideally again as early as possible when the seats are really small and it's easy to plug off and replace them, right?
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Shameless plug. We have a few minutes left, but we have a promo code that we'll share in the post-webinar email. So if you guys want to buy a test kit for yourself, your baby, or whomever, we have a discount code. So be on the lookout for that in the post-webinar email. This is a really interesting question because I think about this often. When my babies are on antibiotics, I always see a change, especially if it's like a 10-day antibiotic. Usually it's for like an ear infection. I see changes in their skin like almost immediately. Like I will see eczema start to appear in my youngest.
Wow.
The diaper rashes are kind of like out of control. Obviously there's stool changes. And not until this discussion have I thought, wow, I just assumed that was just the antibiotic, but it's obviously affecting their gut. Like there's so much happening inside their body when they're taking a 10-day antibiotic. So we have a question from Emily. Her baby has to be on an antibiotic called Bactrim. I think just an antibiotic in general, but what are some things that you can share off the top of your head that we could do to help them restore their gut maybe during and after the antibiotics?
Yeah, we definitely get that a lot, and we certainly want to help babies because, and by the way, just on your note, ear infections are majority viral ear infections, not even bacterial, but because doctors don't have a quick way of telling you which is which, they just prescribe antibiotics just in case. But I would highly encourage you to kind of, wait and push back a little bit. Again, sometimes it is very necessary, but if you wait and give them a lot of vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin A, and, kind of we use garlic oil as well and drop it in. I have been able to avoid that 3 times. Again,
Oh,
don't
wow,
listen.
amazing.
I'm not a doctor. This is
Of
not
course.
medical advice, but I'm just saying that most of viral ear infections are viral. They're really, really not bacterial. It's very rare, right? And so, yes, ideally, we have your child's baseline sample before antibiotic exposure. So we see the state of their gut before, what was there. And then antibiotics can, like these bifidobacteria protective microbes are very sensitive to antibiotics. Whether narrow or broad spectrum, they're very sensitive. So sometimes they get wiped out. And if you don't take care in restoring them, they may be permanently gone, especially with repeated antibiotics, right? We do see some babies given daily antibiotics as well. And, we're helping them, again, hopefully we have the gut before, so we know how to help them restore. I'm not familiar with Bactrim specifically, but we do encourage a good, again, strain-dependent probiotic during and also after. But it's a very subtle thing. I wouldn't just, again, randomly say, take this, right? It depends on the baby's age, that maturation time point, and what they really need to restore. Sometimes it's a bacillus-based probiotic to help them diversify. Sometimes it's a BIF strain because they need to replenish that. Sometimes it's lactobacillus. So there's just different strains I would recommend to test and not guess, especially now we know what we know about the infant gut and how there is a critical time point for immune training. So you don't want to miss that window for immune training because it's just harder to course correct later in life.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Okay. We have 3 minutes left. And so, I think this is a really interesting question and probably important for everyone to understand. We touched on this briefly earlier, but Linda has a question. After performing a gut health test and we find imbalances, what happens next? Are you involved in getting to ideal state?
Yes. We used to actually have a single gut test at $199 that, we have a lot of rich information there for what you can do, an action plan, and very clear. But, when it comes to our babies, we found that people want to talk to someone. So we have microbiome specialists doing consultations. And in fact, we've changed our business model now to include that consult call with the test. So it's $249, but you get a $20 off using the Populist coupon code. And you get to speak to someone for, I believe, 30 minutes one-on-one. You can look through your survey data and your health history and really help you customize the plan for your baby or yourself too, and what you should do in terms of next steps. And we email that to you in summary. And then, if you join our membership, we do have a new membership program called Tiny Plus. You can do it for the whole family. You get to email us or text us questions the entire year that you're a member. So because you never know, again, your baby's born and then they may run into eczema, they may run into antibiotics for ear infections. What do you do then, right? So the membership really provides you with the extra guidance when you need it throughout the year.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, like she said, we'll send the discount code post-webinar email. Cheryl, if there's one thing people leave with today, what do you think is one of the most important things they can take away from our discussion today? What do you want everyone to know before we end?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that the stats. I didn't know this until much later that the CDC reports that 1 in 2 kids today, or almost 1 in 2 kids, have at least one chronic condition. And this is just a crazy number to me. It shouldn't be the new norm. We shouldn't not accept this number, right? And again, when I look at the studies, a lot of it can be linked back to the infant gut. So I feel like we're in this pediatric chronic condition crisis, and we need to tackle that. And I truly built this product. I wish we were even kind of like a nonprofit, but we do have a lot of scientists on board, and we're doing research and actively contributing back to science and publishing and things like that. But I truly want to educate, and I think this is such crucial education for new moms, new parents alike, that I think we can really avert this chronic condition crisis in our kids, right? To prevent, if we understand the microbes in us. We didn't even get to what the microbiome is, but there's actually 38 trillion microbes living in and on us. There's the skin microbiome, there's the oral microbiome, there's the gut and the vaginal microbiome. the gut is the most important. It has the most number of microbes, and it's the most well-studied part of the microbiome that is linked to health and disease. And you get it from your mom at birth.
Right.
So it is so crucial to understand that whole transition from mom to baby, and even the immediate environment in the first few days of life, and how it really trains the baby's immune system for lifelong health. So I think just, if anything there is to take away, I would say don't wait until you see symptoms. I frankly think this is one of the most important things you can do for proactive health. Our healthcare system is, I would call it sick care, because we only go to the doctor when we're sick. But
Right.
I would see tiny health as the proactive care, where you want to catch things and course correct before the symptoms happen. And if you're trying to conceive and pregnant, I would highly encourage that right now, checking in right now, but especially early in life, before your baby even develops that symptom in the first couple of months of life.
All right. I think we need this session next time to be like 2 hours, so we can actually talk about like the basic science, which I didn't even get to, which is so funny to me, because
Yeah.
you know, people clearly care about this topic, and they care about their health and their baby's health. And if we know and are educated that there are things we can do to improve both, especially for the long term of their life, I think parents are willing to do whatever it takes. So Cheryl, to you and your team, it's always a privilege, and it's so fun to work with you guys. And thank you for sharing everything you know that you possibly can in a 45-minute window. And again, thank you for everything. And everyone, look for the post-webinar email that we'll send in a couple hours.
Thank you. And I know we didn't get to the science part, but we do have 2 white papers on our website that you can request and look at how scientifically backed and evidence-based we are. So check that out, tinyhealth.com. And you can also find us on the IG handle at tiny.health. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting.
Thanks, Cheryl. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.